Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to our second plenary. It's nice to see you again. As you've seen from this film, which presents the information in a very visual and persuasive form, communication is very important. That's going to be the theme of our second plenary. We have a fantastic panel lined up for you. I'll come into the audience as well during the round tables. If you want to ask any questions or make any points, please just show me and I'll be happy to give you the microphone. So how do we make road asset management more sexy? How do we communicate it better? That's going to be the question today. So first of all, I'm sure you'll give a big welcome to our two presidents of this plenary. First of all, Siobhan McKelvey, who's president of the International Bitumen Emulsion Federation. Siobhan, big round of applause. Welcome, and together with Siobhan, the other president is Juan José Poti, who's president as ASEFMA and vice president of the AEC de España. Bienvenidos a usted. Right, so first of all, before I invite the other panelists up, we have a series of presentations of different initiatives that have taken place about communication in general. I thought it would be interesting to have your points of view. Now, Siobhan, you've been working for quite some time in the bitumen, asphalt and roads industries. What would you say have been the major changes in terms of communication?
Okay, good morning everyone. It's nice to see so many of you anyway, so that's a great start. As Alex said, I have been in the industry for actually over 25 years now, so I know you might not believe it, but it's true. And when I first started, I was very, very impressed with the way the industry was so dedicated to education and training within the industry. Obviously, it was an environment full of highly qualified technical engineers, etc. So it wasn't so surprising that that was the environment that I sort of came into. But then, I think probably around 10 years ago, maybe around the time of the crisis, the economic crisis, and people were starting to rethink about the future of their businesses and the market environment they work in, I think our industry, particularly my background's more the material side, bitumen and asphalt, but generally, obviously, in the road, collectively, I think we started to come under a lot of pressure, really reflecting on what is the future of our industry, and I think that actually stimulated a lot of more initiatives in the industry to start to be more vocal, not only inside the industry, which we were extremely well experienced at doing, because we have so many excellent technical argumentations, and solutions for everything. So for me, that wasn't the problem, but it was really encouraging to see the change in really starting to look outside of the industry. And I think that was something I really noticed probably around 10 years ago. I'm not sure if you would agree with that, but from my experience, I started to see some great initiatives. I was very fortunate actually to be part of my specific industry. We launched, for example, the Asphalt Advantages campaign, where we tried to bring together some of these technical arguments that you have to translate into a wider audience. So you have to try and find a way to translate the technical benefit to maybe the value to that particular audience and make it more understandable, and the value of what we can offer to the end users. So another example, I think, of the way we've changed and tried to engage with the wider stakeholders is an example of this conference we had 3 years ago. One of the main objectives of this PPRS is to reach out to a wider audience, a wider stakeholder, talk and discuss with politicians, with decision makers, the importance of planned and well-maintained roads. So, these type of initiatives are increasing, and I think it's really encouraging to see. Just share one little story before I finish. I think it obviously has had an impact because I'm from a wonderful city called Liverpool. I live near there, and before I travelled over to Nice, I heard on the radio that you'll be aware that Prince Harry is getting married in a few weeks. So the local council in Liverpool decided to give some funds to the local residents to have street parties. It's quite a tradition in the UK. And there was so much uproar from the people because they said, we don't want money to have a party. We want money to fix the roads in our local environment. So for me, that was quite we wouldn't probably have had that reaction 10 years ago because roads wasn't on the public agenda. So I think that was...
I thought you were Scottish. I didn't realise you were from Liverpool. You told me you were Scottish before.
I'm a Glaswegian, so we get about.
Tell us, what do you think of, in your experience, what would you say were the biggest challenges? I don't know, give me three. The biggest challenges you've seen.
Yes, I think it's, like any industry, when you deal with marketing communications, it's really identifying the target audiences, really who are the key influencers. And again, as I said before, I think we tended to be too thinking inside the box, thinking inside our industry. And we don't need to convince each other. We're all here because we know, we're believers, we're passionate about what we do and what the product can perform and give. But I think finding the right audiences and then actually identifying the key messages that are going to be of value to those audiences. So that's, it's a kind of a principle that you would base any marketing or communication campaign on. So you asked for three, so the third one is actually the big challenge is Europe. We have a lot of culture, different languages. It's great, history, etc. But the key challenge there is bringing everything together when we have a common goal. It's a high level, bringing it all together to have a bigger impact. It's very achievable, but I think that's a challenge that we have to look at as an industry.
What would you like to see as the positive outcome from the workshops and what we're doing here at the moment? What would be the ideal outcome or takeaway for you?
Well, I'm convinced that the audience here will hear later on this morning some, great examples of what is happening in different national countries, these initiatives. As I said, I just see them, they're increasing and increasing, and it's really encouraging to see that. But I'm hoping that we'll also realize that, I was trying to maybe compare it, you have singers, you have vocalists that are exceptional, but if you bring them all together, you have a choir. And I think my mission and hopefully my belief is that hopefully this session today can demonstrate that if we all sing together, we'll have a stronger voice and the choir will be, stronger. So
you're going to be telling us it's going to become the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yes.
It's 12 points for sexy communication.
I don't think Scotland have ever had a song.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. Juan José, vamos a hablar en español. If anybody needs Spanish, so maybe if there are hostesses who could come.
If you're going to,
Everybody go out. If you need a headphone, if you put your hands up, peut-être des hôtesses pourraient venir avec les casques plutôt que. Many people? Ah, c'est parfait. Perfect. Great. Alors, ¿por qué Juan José un cambio en la comunicación hace 7?
Juan Jose, I'd like to ask a question for you about. So there has been changes in communication some 7 years ago. Hello, everybody. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be here this morning, and I would also like to thank all of the people who are watching us streaming on internet. So our association is called ASEFMA. 7 years ago, we decided to do something which you may be surprised to learn about. It sounds a little frivolous. We decided to really go all out on communication because there were crises in all of countries in Europe, but particularly in Spain. We realized that there was a very high, very strong economic crisis in 2008, 2009. And at that time, we decided to react on 4 levels. We decided, first of all, technically, that we needed to reinforce our technical arguments about the importance of reinforcing and maintaining roads. We communicated about the need for our country to better maintain its roads. And the second level, in terms of communication, was support from associations. As SFMA, we manufacture asphalt mixes, and that's very important for road conservation. But we can't defend that on our own. There are other stakeholders that are also involved. So we decided to rally all of the associations we were familiar with in Spain and abroad, and we identified local strategies as well as national strategies and international strategies too. So this was a political stance because the crisis illustrated that it's not enough to ask your governments for money for roads. That is not sufficient. We really needed to change our communication strategy. We had to make all the necessary efforts to ensure that citizens grasp that message. Citizens have to be given the right information, and journalists too. We were addressing our messages to journalists also, and they had to get the right information, and that would have to be a way of getting politicians to change their priorities. And so that in turn would lead to better budgets for caring for roads. We also worked on a social level. There's one person, José María, who's going to make a presentation this morning. He's going to talk about a major communication campaign on Spanish TV. And this campaign was really enormously broadcast, and he'll tell you more about it. It was really important, we felt, to change the way we communicated so that we could really reach citizens. I'm used to speaking out. Of course, I'm speaking to rooms of 700 people, for example, but it's not a question of gathering people together. It was more about changing our message, because if you're talking to people who are already on your side, then you're wasting your breath, really. We need to direct our energies towards streaming and social media and all the hashtags that we hear about nowadays. So what experience have you gathered in your years in the road sector? Could you perhaps give us some concrete examples? Yes, I can. I always endeavour to share my experience. I have done a lot of communication. People wonder why I do. They think I'm crazy. They wonder why I expend so much energy communicating. But I must say that in every technical congress, there is always a streaming program. And there are hashtags also, like the one we're using today. It's on the stage here. And I was obsessed that all of the interesting things we were talking about in our conferences was broadcast on social media. And we've been able to gauge the impact. Yesterday, there were over 2,300,000 tweets from our meeting, and we managed to reach out to 400,000 people. So there are 500 or 600 people at this conference, which is really small when you think that the world is so big. So we need to have a global mindset. We saw that in that introductory video. And if we do that, then we'll be able to reach out to many more people. In Spain, currently, over 50% of the people who come to these conferences, engineers, etc., they have access to the networks. And all companies are present on social networks as well. I have a third question for you. This is the same question that I asked to Siobhan. In your mind, what is the main challenge in our road sector in the short term? Well, communication isn't an end in itself. It's just part of a strategy. We really have to identify our goals. That's what I've always tried to do, and it will be illustrated later on this morning. We have to gain a critical mass so that we can all communicate about the same things in the same direction. Languages are a problem. I get tweets from Turkey, from Slovenia, and there are apps for translation. If you just have a few words you need to translate quickly, it's not a problem. I think we in general are not aware that roads don't scream, don't shout, they don't go out on demonstrations. Roads are silent, so we have to speak out for the roads. So we need to have people who are out on the social networks and making a noise about roads. And we have to work towards the same goals. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed listening to your Spanish there, rolling your R's.
You can give them a round of applause because they're exactly on time. They're supposed to speak 15 minutes, and it's a good start. Right, so we thought it'd be interesting, ladies and gentlemen, to have 5 different experiences of different initiatives to do with communication from different sectors and different countries. They will present their initiatives. We're giving them 7 minutes. I'm going to be very strict on the time. You know what it's like. If the first one does 8 minutes, the next one will do 9 minutes. So you have a timer here, 7 minutes, and after 7 minutes, you will eject, and you will explode. So to make sure you all have the same time. But afterwards, feel free. I will come in the audience, and we can ask, together with our 2 presidents, we can ask questions, and I will take your questions. So if I can just ask your names, and I'll introduce you when you do your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on the stage Thomas Linda, José María Quesada Martín, Gary Schofield, David Peshkin, and Pierre Chasseret. Big round of applause for all of them. Thank you very much. And I think we have a technician who's going to make sure that your slides all work. So, gentlemen, you've understood the principle, 7 minutes each, and then afterwards questions from the floor. We're going to start, first of all, with Thomas Lindner, your road network manager in southern Bavaria in the Bavarian State Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Grüß Gott, 7 Minuten.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to explain you some steps we have carried out to achieve a better funding for road maintenance, one element of road asset management. Communication was one of the key elements in this process, and I will not talk about Facebook and Twitter. Step number 1, as road engineers, we have to be experts in our business. The condition survey, the prognosis of the condition development, the definition of the maintenance strategy, the maintenance program and the building program, as well as the controlling. Let us say the whole maintenance cycle in this slide has to be carried out with profound engineering expertise. This is the work of engineers and technicians, including all the traceable data processing and the final visualization of technical information. Undoubtedly, this step number 1 is expected to be of a high quality. It was the only technical slide I have. Step number 2 has to do a lot with communication. It is not only the task to bring technical results to engineers, but finally it is important to bring the information to decision makers who usually are not engineers. On the left-hand side, you see a technical information that is understandable for engineers, but not for decision makers. What is the IRI? What does the target value mean? Is it better to have a high or a low IRI? What is the effect of the 3 strategies, blue, red, and green? The task for us is to translate the engineering language into a language that is easily understandable by decision makers, like you can see on the right-hand side. At one glance only, everyone will understand the effect of the 3 strategies on the network condition. This is still step number 2. Bring the information into an easily understandable form. Use striking charts and diagrams and explain how you get there in a traceable way. We have done it in a special issue of our house journal. This has been translated into English, and I brought a few copies. I will place them on the stage then. This has been you also can find it on the website of my ministry. The chart shows the condition development within 10 years. Dots above the diagonal line mean a worsening of the road condition. If you go to the first page, you can find a foreword by our minister. It's right in here in this journal. And State Secretary dedicated to maintenance management for our Bavarian road network. Motorways, federal highways, and state roads altogether 25,000 kilometers. This is step number 3. Manage it that your boss is on your side. This is only possible with clear statements, with evidence of high quality, and with a traceable process. I'm sorry. Convince the boss means to manage that your concern is his concern. Explain your approach in an easily understandable way so that your boss can explain your approach in an easily understandable way to his boss or his colleagues. Make asset management a topic in the cabinet of ministers. Here in the lower part of the picture, you see my minister. Bring your boss to transport your concern into the highest level of decision makers. Let him explain what happens if nothing happens. Realize that a maximum time slot of 15 minutes must guarantee the success. It might be even less than 15 minutes. So concentrate on the key findings. This was step number 4. The next step is to involve the Parliament, as it is the state's budget authority. Address all deputies with a letter of your minister and send them the executive summary and the brochure. Be aware that not all deputies are interested in roads, but find out who is interested. Bring the interested deputies together and tell them the story. Make them aware that such a big red sector is not acceptable. The red sector means the portion of roads in an unsatisfying condition. Let me say it again. Explain a traceable process. Use striking charts and easily understandable figures. Take a graphic designer on board to give your statements the target-oriented finishing. Involve a journalist to find the right wording. Don't think that you are an expert in this business if you are an engineer. Explain what you can achieve with an adequate budget and create a regional context to address each single deputy. This slide only I put here to show you the increase of the dark yellow section. That's the maintenance budget. It's an increase over the last 10 years. The figures I will not explain here. In line with the budget increase, we can observe a slight amelioration of comparison between 3 consecuting condition survey campaigns. The green columns refer to our state roads. From left to right, we can observe an improvement of usage and substance values. Tell your audience that by improving the surface condition, you also achieve an improvement of traffic safety, which is a very good trigger to open the ears of your audience. And this is the final step of communication. Show what you are doing with the increased budget. This is a very nice example of a press article about the activities of a local road authority. The headline says, tunnels, bridges, and lots of asphalt. Green shows what has been finalized last year, and red shows what they are launching this year. Manage to bring the press making reports about your work. Road users are interested in these things. They will experience the obstacles through construction sites, as well as the benefits of carried out measures. The local deputies will feel good when they read such an article, and they will be with you in the next cycle. That's my contribution to our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Linda, for that. Those very concrete examples, and an example from the press, the article that you showed at the end. Let's go to Spain. We have José María Quesada Martín. Usted va a hablar español.
You're going to speak English, right? Spanish, then. It's our pleasure. You're going to talk about Ponle Freno, which is a Spanish campaign about road conditions. You have 7 minutes to explain this concrete example from Spain. Good morning, everyone. Please speak on the microphone. You can hear me, right? Good morning, and thank you very much to the organizers for having invited us. To tell you the truth, I'm overwhelmed because I'm surrounded by specialists on roads. But let me tell you that from what I can see, I think that our experience is quite unique. The Ponle Freno experience and the entity I represent, Ponle Freno, which in English means brake, it is an initiative by way of a citizenship platform designed to reach the ultimate goal of reducing incidents on the road. It is our director, Javier Bardajin, set this in motion 10 years ago. For those of you who don't know our 3D media, it is the leader group. It's called Address Media, with many advantages, and you will see after my presentation. We have 3 channel stations, 4 broadcast radio stations, 3 multimedia platforms, and we also contribute to many funds for filmmaking. The idea of Ponle Freno, this campaign, is to reduce traffic incidents. Our goal is that by 2020, there wouldn't be any more accidents. Our objectives are to raise awareness. We took certain initiatives regarding the incident rate in our countries. We give visibility to good practices in terms of traffic, and ultimately what we would like to achieve is to promote prevention as a priority. We say that the human factor is responsible of 80% of accidents or road incidents. And because of that, Ponle Freno took the initiative of having road safety as a classroom subject in schools. This is an example of initiatives that can benefit all of the sectors that are involved in road traffic. From this point of view, when placing road safety as a classroom subject, we managed to have a legislation passed at the parliament to have it as a subject at school, and a grade is given to the students. It's not considered as an extra curricular activity, but as a subject at school. Another example is that, unfortunately, spinal cord injury is one of the most serious concerns, and what we decided to do as an initiative by providing 1.4 million to good initiatives and help people who suffered spinal cord injuries. And also, in the last 10 years, 5 of the last 10 years, we have done a campaign so that the users can report signs and roads in bad conditions. So the users can take pictures when they see a deteriorated place. They send us the picture, and we send those reports, those claims, to the different administrations that are competent and have jurisdiction on the subject. So everything that we're talking about, which is given visibility, that is very particular, because the final client or customer is the state. The state doesn't know to do advertising, which means they don't show all the advances in terms of research and developments, which are too many, very many. And I'm happy to see, thanks to this work, I'm in connection with many companies in the private sector. And one of the things that was the apparent stagnation of the industry of road constructions, because in my country I see the same things as 40 years ago, but I still see that when the pavement is repaired, the pavement is the same. And when we drill down a little bit, we realize that it's not the company's fault. The companies have very, very advanced technologies, but when they reach the client, when they go to the client, which is the state, the government, what matters is the budget. And of course, with the budget that we have, we're not going anywhere. Another important action that we took, that have in mind that 550 cyclists have died in the last 10 years, we placed 22 signs, different road signs along the roads that are populated by cyclists, of course, with the approval of the relevant ministry and the General Director for Traffic. The black holes, you know that there are a number of black dots where places where have a great accident incidence. So we managed to place signs in 189 sections with high concentrations of incidents. We designed, in agreement with the traffic department, this measure, and we'd like to believe that we have contributed to something, because the year after signaling, we have lowered the incidence by 60%. So what we're talking about here, which is communication and signaling, is very important, because this sector does not really reach to the large public. The roads do not cry, but they are very important, because even though they are not a cause for accidents, they condition to a great extent the driver's behavior. So we need to raise awareness so that citizens demand road improvements to their administration. Since I don't have any more time left, I will stop here to meet the time. Thank you.
Por esos ejemplos.
Thank you for your very important examples.
On to Gary Schofield. You're the technical director of Total UK, representing the asphalt industry Alliance. Let's hear some of your examples. If you want to click on your slides, there we are. Mind the Gap.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you very much for the PPRS for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for the promotion you've just given me as Technical Director of Total. But I'm here to talk about the Asphalt Industry Alliance, and this is an organisation set up between Eurobitume UK and the Mineral Products Association, very much with a view to have a joint approach to looking at the facts of where we are with the roads and where we need to go, and working with the different authorities to try and improve the situation. So just to start with, I think it's useful to just give a bit of background as to how the UK roads are funded. And first of all, we have the strategic road network, which is the main arterial routes. And this accounts for only 2% of the roads in the UK, so by kilometres it's very much a minority. But when you look at the traffic that it carries, we see that it's carrying the substantial amount, a third of all road traffic and 2/3 of all freight traffic is travelling on the strategic road network. And it's the responsibility of centrally, and it's funded centrally. On the other side of the coin, we've got the local road network, which really combines 171 different authorities. So getting consistency throughout is very difficult. And this is 98% of the road network in the UK. And unfortunately, you will see that that asset is worth about £400 billion, but less than 0.03% is put back into it in annual maintenance. So we have to be very careful about how we look at these fundings, because again, when we compare and put into some context the disparity of the funding that we're getting, on the strategic road network between 2015 and 2020, we see that there's going to be £1.1 million per mile spent on the strategic network. And you compare that with what's happening with the local authority network, where we're just spending £21,000 per mile, a huge discrepancy. And so we're seeing that we're getting a continual fall behind, shall we say, in terms of condition of the local authority network. We see that where we need to be budgeting, where we're actually budgeting, and that gap is forever widening. So it's something that the asphalt industry and the asphalt industry recognises this, and the AIA have put together a strategy, if you like, in 3 stages. First of all, let's generate the factual data so that we can talk credibly about the state of the roads. Secondly, we want to look at grabbing the headlines through media campaigns and really raising this true picture of the road situation. But then critically important is using that profile that we've now gained to influence the policymakers, because at the end of the day, profile is no good if it's not going to make a difference with the policymakers and the holders of the purse. So what we have done is develop this, what we call an alarm survey, annual local authority road maintenance survey. It's now in its 23rd year, but it's been forever evolving over that period. And essentially, we work together with the industry and with the client side to develop a series of 150 questions or more, which goes around the local authorities with the aim of trying to really understand where we are in terms of the road network. And this has been done, as I say, for 23 years, and we're developing more and more on the profile of this. We're working with the local authorities on a continual basis. It's not just a once-a-year situation, but we've got seminars and conferences which we run throughout the year involving the local authorities. And part of the reason for that is we want this alarm survey to be credible, and we want a good number of people contributing to it. And so we saw this year, 2018, we had 60% of the local authorities contributed to developing this survey and to answering this survey. And we know that the local authorities hold this in high regard because it's factual information. But once you've got the data, what does it mean? We all know that there's lies, damn lies and statistics. So how can we make the most of this information? Well, what the AIA have done is that we've brought together focus groups
We're looking at the figures and we're trying to understand what the story behind the figures are. And the importance of that is that we can generate the right information for PR. And there's two quotes there on the right-hand side of the slide, which I feel are absolutely superb in summing up the situation. The first one says, our aging local road network has seen years of underfunding, and now we have to be prepared for the tidal wave of deterioration that is on the horizon. Summing up very nicely that it's not something which has just happened, it's been building, but now we're going to get a tsunami of effect. And the second one, all we can afford to do is keep re-icing the cake, but the cake itself is crumbling and needs to be remade. So the alarm survey is trying to get the message across in clear infographics. That's the best way to get the message across. Not technical language, simple visual information that people can readily understand. We have a strong use of these and pictures and quotes, and I think in the survey itself it's been incredibly beneficial. And we use the survey then to go on and hit the media, and we do that by sort of traditional media approach. We give them an alert, we develop the message, and then we hit both the television media, the newspapers and so on and so forth. And the response has been fantastic. And this year, we see that we've been on BBC Breakfast, the BBC News, the main news. We had a session on there. Many of the TV stations around the UK, local radio stations, BBC. So the message has been got out there. But interestingly, it's not just about the message of getting out to the public, of course. It's with the government as well, the purse holders. Key messages we see there. More than 24,000 miles of road need repairing in the next year. £556 million annual carriageway budget shortfall. And interestingly there, one-time catch-up would take 14 years to complete and cost £9.3 billion. So these are real figures that we're looking at. How are we going to make use of this? We go to the government. We go to the all-party parliamentary group on highways and plead for funding. And only yesterday we saw the Transport Secretary promise £100 million more budget going into this area. So that's what we're after, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Thank you.
He finished exactly on zero. We have the timer here. It was calibrated exactly then, but thank you very much. It was very interesting to see the actual result dating from yesterday. Chris Grayling announced more spending. It's not that easy to get spending out of the British government at the moment. David Peshkin, the Vice President of Applied Pavement Technology from the USA. I think you have a presentation too if you want to click. So, your 7 minutes. Tell us, give us an example of what you've been doing in the States.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for your attention. I'm going to talk a little bit about communicating the value of preservation. And I'm sure that you're all familiar with the problem. You've been to many presentations by engineers. Engineers have a unique perspective. I happen to be an engineer and a consultant. And I know you're familiar with engineers. Engineers have made presentations here. Let me tell you a little bit about engineers, although I'm glad that others have pointed out the issue as well. You all know the difference between an introvert engineer and an extrovert engineer. The extrovert stares at your shoes. We are not necessarily gifted with the ability to communicate, although we are certainly able to talk. And I've already heard others talk about the background of engineers and our technical background, and that certainly describes how we best communicate. And describing the value of communication, we often do it with a lot of technical information. And you may have seen this, I've seen this already at this conference, where an engineer puts up dense graphics and explains it by saying, I know you can't see this. So what's the point? The point is we need to learn how to communicate better, and especially about our topic of preservation. And to that end, in fact, I didn't put this presentation together. As an engineer, I knew I was not capable of doing that, and I had our graphics person help with that, and she did a good job of doing what I couldn't do. I've heard these same points mentioned over and over again. We need to communicate better. One difference that I will introduce to you is a report that gives us some of these guidelines in detail about how to communicate better. And this is a National Cooperative Highway Research Project report. I don't have the link up here, but the report is available online. You can search for NCHRP report 742 and discover this. And it's a playbook, a guide to how to communicate better on preservation. And it goes into a high-level overview of what's important in communication. And again, it's very gratifying to hear from the other speakers. They've highlighted these same points. This is a place where you can go and study them in a little more detail. And this report gives us 3 essential building blocks to communicate the value of pavement preservation. And the first is, again, a point we've already heard. You must understand your audience. You must understand what's important to them, what interests them, because that is the entry into reaching them via communication. So where engineers might be more interested in the background, the research that goes behind what we're presenting, your audience might be more interested in facts about safety or customer satisfaction or cost savings. You have to design the message so that it reaches the audience that you've identified. And certainly if we're communicating to engineers, engineers like to look at things like this, I think. And they like to hear that you can't see this, but if you're designing the message for your audience, you need to communicate that message in a clear, visually appealing manner that maybe conglomerates everything that you know as an engineer and puts it in simpler terms. So whether it's a product that is better or lasts longer or costs less or saves more money, think about how that can be communicated to your target audience clearly and simply, because that's how they're going to absorb the message. You have to be able to deliver the message effectively. So as engineers, as consultants, we like to write reports. We like to use large technical terms. We like to make very complicated PowerPoints to help you to take your siesta. They certainly have their place. However, they're not always the right way to communicate. So again, I'm happy to have heard this from others already. The audience doesn't come to the audience of our research or the audience of our studies doesn't always come to these workshops and congresses to get their information. So where do they go? Of course, they go to the internet. They go to social media, hashtag PPRS. They might go elsewhere. So don't make them come to you. Design your message to find them. And then market research is a very important part. And again, we're straying farther and farther from the comfort zone of engineers in communicating and in doing market research. We are probably going to have to look to others who have training and background in this field to help us. And so we give them the technical information. We know the audience. We know how they access their information. And we use that background to effectively communicate the message to the audience. I have up here, and I'm not going to play this for you because it's a 2-minute video and I have 38 seconds left. but this is a very interesting link to a state highway department video about pavement preservation. And I think it does an excellent job of communicating to the public the value of pavement preservation, and it incorporates many of the ideas that I'm talking about. So I encourage you, when you have access to the presentation, to click on the link and look at this. So that's my presentation. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, David. That was a fantastic thing. And it's true that I host loads of conventions, and the number of slides, which are way too complex, and we're all inundated with information everywhere we go. And if you keep it simple, it gets to people much easier. You put it. If we have space, have you given the link to the gallery? If we have space at the end of the round table, I think we could possibly end the round table by looking at that video, because you've whetted our appetite. Now we want to see. Peut-être à la fin, on va diffuser quand même le film sur la 2 minutes à la fin de la table ronde. So Pierre Chasseret, j'imagine que vous avez parlé en français ou en anglais? En français, d'accord. Donc vous êtes, j'ai votre titre en anglais, Executive Officer of the French Association, 40 millions d'automobilistes, 40 million motorists, et vous êtes le Executive Officer. Vos 7 minutes, s'il vous plaît, pour nous convaincre.
Bonjour à tous. Bon, déjà pour le moment, tout le monde a respecté les 7 minutes. Je vais essayer d'en faire de même.
Everyone has respected the 7 minutes. I'm trying to do the same. We're going to talk about communication. And communication means convincing. I've heard a lot about this word since we started. Conviction is all over the place. But we have to know, we have to have knowledge first. We have to know what the road is today. And there's a good angle in on that. That's road safety. With my association, 40 millions d'automobilistes, we are working on road safety all the time. When you look a little deeper, when you're looking for surveys which highlight the link between accidents and road infrastructures, you do not find any information apart from one source. You have to go back some 20 years in time to find a survey. And this study say that in 47% of accidents, the road is at cause. It could be poor upkeep of the road network. So perhaps we need to innovate. Perhaps we need to communicate differently. I'm thinking of something which we all have in all of our countries for looking after our cars. We have a MOT test. It exists in every country. Is the state in a position to map out its entire road network to know what the width is of this or that road? What's the road marking like? Is it in good condition or bad? Do we have that? No, we do not. We do not have that information, whereas one imagines that in France we're talking about dropping the speed limit. And that's causing a problem in the government, because why are they deciding to bring that speed limit down? It's not based on anything. We don't know how dangerous our roads are. So we need to look at this more carefully and get some information from the statistics. When I see that road investments are, when we're spending less on our road heritage here in France than in the past, I know that we're investing less. Am I the only person who imagines that there's some kind of link between road safety on the one hand, which is still high, and the state of the roads? No, I'm sure I'm not alone. I think we have to convince people that there is that link. And it has to start out at the grassroots. It has to start with the user themselves. I was listening to Juan José Porti saying that you have to be popular. You have to get over all your differences, because we are going to have to get over barriers together. We've got these social networks. They're great. We can talk to millions of people comfortably, just sitting in your settee. You can send a message out to the world. The only problem with the social networks is that, well, I've just been monitoring Juan José on Twitter, but we are both believing in the same things, because the problem with social networks is they enclose us into a bubble of people, of like-minded people. So we're going to have to burst that bubble. And we're going to have to use media compatible language. I've seen in all of our presentations, we've at least quoted the press once. There's been a newspaper or magazine article in every presentation. And we're going to have to win the press over. To win the press over, I've got an idea. Let's show how the roads are evolving. Let's show how roads is not just asphalt on the ground. Roads can be ecological. There are solar roads. What a wonderful idea. We're completely in tune with our day with solar roads. There are some roads which reduce noise. Do the French and the Europeans know that there are road pavements that reduce noise? That will be an interesting piece of information for future local elections, for example, to work towards a soothing city, the city which makes less noise, which is quieter. Let's communicate about that. And to communicate accurately, you really have to include road users. In our association, I don't have a PowerPoint. No complicated slides in my presentation, but we've developed an app. It's a free app, and it's for all road users. And we're going to go even further. It's for cyclists, and it's for the motorbike users, and it's for pedestrians because the pavements can be in a bad state. And it's called My Road Hurts. J'ai mal à ma route in French. And this app is available. Everyone can download it from the usual places, and it gives you an opportunity to report in just a couple of clicks using geolocalization. It gives you the opportunity to report the problem that you have encountered on your road. So every Friday a message is generated which compiles all of the messages in a particular county or a département, as we say here in France, and it's fed back to the road authorities. It works. So we've had different levels of feedback from our prefectures. Some thanked us because we were doing good work, and road users out in the field were contributing to that work and were helping the local authorities to make improvements. So there are people who are in their cars every day and they can report that kind of thing. So that's what we were thanked for. But then some authorities were rather uncomfortable because the figures in their region are poor. The Hauts-de-Saône, for example, region has got really bad figures. I don't want to say anything nasty about them, but they have got an increase in the number of deaths on the roads in their region. So let's flag that situation. And we're going to take things one step further. We're going to have to communicate in a sexier manner. Let's be more glamorous, but let's be more accurate about what we're saying. Let's use more vectors. Let's not just limit ourselves to financial press. Let's work with associations to communicate messages that are accurate and simple. We could sum it up quite simply. We've got a French president who speaks in English. I can't speak English as well as he does, but why not make our planet great again, make France great again, make our roads great again? Thank you very much.
In terms of communication, I think you've given excellent examples. I host a lot of these conventions, and the fact that all 5 people did exactly what they asked them to do and communicated your messages in 7 minutes, I think is already a very good example. We have now a short round table. Siobhan and Juan Jose, I'm sure you have some questions. I'll start the ball rolling with a question, but then I'll come into the audience, and if you want to ask a question, make a point, just raise your hand and I'll give you the microphone. I'd like to, Thomas, Linda, I'd like to start with you. We saw this wonderful photograph of your Bavarian politicians all smiling. I want to know, how did you persuade them to give you more money? That's the key question. How do you make politicians, it's all very well communicating, but what's your recipe?
It's only very simple. A traceable technical process of high quality, let's say from condition survey to KPI to key performance indicators, traceable and of high quality. An easy to understand translation into a non-engineering language Make a trial. Show the chart to your wife, to your husband, to your daughter, or your neighbor, and check if the chart is understood instantly. If yes, then you can use it. And keep communication always an active part. Don't answer questions, explain things before questions come up. That's kind of a recipe.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very, very short terms. Siobhan, you...
I was just going. Is that on? Yes. Just to continue on that story. There is a story then that you're telling the politicians, but what are the key drivers in that story that excited them to listen to what you had to say? Was it to do with converting it back to money saving or money investing in the future, or what was the key element of your story that was so interesting?
I think the key element is to show the worsening of infrastructure, worsening the condition of infrastructure, but you also have the relation to the asset value. If the condition is worsening, also the depreciation of the asset value, you can combine it. That's the key element, I think, and also a very strong regionalization, because you don't have to speak to a high-level politician only. You have to put it in a context with a regional responsible politician, a deputy mayor of a city, or regional responsible people.
Just a quick additional question. You talk about asset management and getting that's one of the key interests. I think we all find, though, that in politicians, maybe they think slightly short-term sometimes. How do you get over that to think about longer-term investments, such as maintaining the roads?
Everyone, even an engineer, needs to have good luck. And we were lucky because we had the same minister for more than 10 years. Right, last Wednesday we lost him because my department has been upgraded to an own ministry, and I have a new minister now, and to teach her how things are going. So you need luck.
Perfect. I'll just take one question, Juanjo, before we go on to you. Could you tell us who you are?
Bonjour, Karim Kamiri.
Hello, I've got a question. I've heard two different visions here, quite complementary visions. The first, talking about a world which exists and will evolve, and influencing public players, so we've understood all about their surveys. And there's another view which talks about the users, and it is the user who is important, because the user is important to the council. So between these two worlds, which one is moving faster? Is one just a puppet? So my question underlying all of this is about data. In your studies and surveys, you've all carried out surveys and studies, and even the French Association, you've got a database. Can you make that data available to everyone, including startups, to users, and to different other stakeholders, so that they can use your data?
Can you make it accessible, and how can that be used?
Alors en fait, sur l'application J'ai mal à ma route.
As far as my app is concerned, we didn't want to broadcast all of the problem areas which are pointed out. It was our strategy. We decided to do that because the problem when you start communicating is that you can generate communication peaks and not have that background noise. So we have strong communication by the stakeholders in the sector who have communicated about what is serious, about the feasibility of things, real studies and surveys. And then on the other hand, you've got the users, whom I'm representing today, and our association generates its own communication. And we are soon about to publish an updated map, and we're going to call it the map of the worst roads in France. And that will, I'm sure, trigger a lot of coverage in the media, and that will bring issues to the fore which are important to the users. So when you've got the media interested, strangely enough, the politicians start to get interested. And once you've got the politicians interested, then the door is open to very serious people who put on very smart ties and who will be able to talk seriously about feasibility. So that's the alchemy that we're trying to work on together. So on the one hand, there's popular pressure from the people, and then there's the credibility of serious studies. Juan Jose, you have a question. Oh, yes, I've got a question. It may be a little bit provocative, but I want one for Jose Maria. If I understand correctly, in your presentation, you said that 80% of accidents are due to human errors. Does that mean that roads cannot be improved? Does that mean that because we have lower budgets, it's not really a problem because the error is human? I just want to know what your thought is on this, because you are very familiar with all this information. You're very sensitive about this issue. Indeed. In 80% of cases, accidents are caused by human error. That does not mean that there are no other contributing factors. Driving conditions can be bad, for example. If someone's driving at 120 kilometers an hour and does and skids on water, then that's because there's a problem on the road and there's an accumulation of water on the road. And in the work that we carry out in our association, we have learned that when people are interested in new things, well, yes, politicians start to get interested as well. We are in a big, well-known group, and the important thing when you are popular on the networks is that people will, because we've got a good reputation, politicians will pick up the phone when we call them. And because we're quite popular, the politicians are willing to listen to us. We take advantage of that. To underline the importance of maintaining all of the roads. So we've got a deficit in our budget for 1.6 million approximately. In fact, no, there's a huge, colossal deficit in our road maintenance, and it's growing from year to year. So our target must be to ensure that the reasons for accidents are addressed objectively. Perhaps, who knows, we'll go from 80% human error to 90% human error. The only people who are responsible for the roads are, well, human drivers and politicians, etc. You've talked a little bit about these accidents on roads in bad repair, and you've said there's about 47% of accidents are on those. I don't want to interrupt for very long. I would just like to thank all of the speakers, the Spanish speakers, the English speakers, for showing that we are talking about concrete data and that we can translate that data. I don't understand the French speaker, I suggest you come and visit our website. There's a ton of information with all of the percentages of accidents in terms of infrastructure, human error. There's even a road safety manual which is online. And so I invite you to go and check your facts before you say things. When you say there's not been any surveys in the past 20 years, you are wrong about that. You are so wrong about that. Check your facts. I'd just like to come back on that. I was talking about state surveys, the government surveys. That's what I was talking about. Okay, that's cleared up. Siobhan and Juan Jose.
Yeah,
Siobhan.
I had a question for Gary, actually leading on from the data. You mentioned in the UK you have this strategy that's built around data and building headlines and then going to the influencers. How much of a part or a role does the survey, the alarm survey, make a difference in implementing that strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And we've got to realise that these surveys, this involvement from the industry, costs a lot of money in itself. So there's got to be a return which makes it worthwhile. And we knock on the door of the politicians by taking part in this all-party parliamentary group. And the fact that we can bring these figures generated by the local authority themselves, illustrating where the shortfalls are, that makes it easier for us to talk with the politicians and highlight the key areas where we need to improve with the funding. And we know for a fact that this is taken back because we hear, sorry about that, we hear all the time of evidence of the alarm survey being used in political discussions within the House of Westminster. So we can see that it is having a positive impact. I mentioned at the end of the presentation the fact that £100 million has been released only yesterday for extra spending on roads. I think there's also been an awareness that it's not just about spending money. It's about spending money wisely. And that's a critical message that we must get across. Because we saw about 5 years ago, introduced into the UK, was a new incentive called the Highways Maintenance Efficiency Programme. And this was geared towards the local authorities better understanding their own network and better looking after that very valuable asset. And so it was targeted at looking at longer-term maintenance, longer-term protection of the infrastructure, rather than just the knee-jerk, short-term answers. And that is something we have to guard against. What we talked about just then, this £100 million funding, is talked about a pothole fund. And that's very, very dangerous language, because if it's only used to fill potholes that are going to come out again 12 months later, then that is a waste of resource. So part and parcel of the follow-on action is not just to open the door for funding, but to then move on and try and make the politicians, make the local authorities understand the wisdom of how they spend that money. And it's got to be geared towards long-term performance.
Okay, perfect. I figure we're running out of time a bit. 5 minutes. Can I take one question from here, and I'll hand over to you for conclusions, briefly.
Thank you. My name's Graham Pendlebury. I look after local transport at the Department for Transport in the UK. So the 100 million's come from my budget.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask the panel what they think about the difference between better communication and lobbying. Because the first is about using facts and information to enable rational decisions to be taken by road users and by politicians. And the second is actually taking bits of information and putting a spin around it. And that's actually something that politicians, and particularly civil servants, are quite allergic to. And I've heard a bit about both so far from the panel. I wonder if anybody's got any comments on that.
We could talk about this for 2 hours. If we could have the brief difference between communication and lobbying. Yes?
Le lobby fait partie de la stratégie.
Lobbying is part of our communication strategy. It's a hidden part of communication. Maybe there's a negative aspect to it, but any form of communication or communication plan or campaign has to include two levels. First of all, the general public, and then a sort of underground portion. So this is what we could call lobbying. Lobbying, I don't know why we always consider that it's something negative, because the lobbying is only an answer to an expectation. There's no successful lobbying without the general approval of the general public, or else it won't work. There's one example in France. It's something that has to do with the road network. When we used we introduced the compulsory alcohol tests some years ago, in every car you had to have a disposable device to determine whether you were drunk when taking your car or not. And that's something that the general public did not like at all. But then the general public fought back, and the Ministry of the Interior decided to do away with this obligation. That's because the general public used lobbying techniques to convince the government.
The question, sorry, is I think the industry overall, in my view and my experience, is that we're looking for a sustainable future, one that's going to last. So I think we always look for communication that's based on data, that is, credible, and also it might take longer. We've heard 23 years of the alarms. I was there when it started, so, and I don't think it always had the same impact at the beginning, but you have to keep reinforcing the message in a credible way. So I think, sustainable communication is what I would recommend is a good way forward. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm going to keep Siobhan and Juanco. I've been up. They haven't got your film, I'm afraid. But could you just remind us, Dave, where we can find your YouTube film? What do we type on the search engine? How can we? Because it sounded interesting. How can we find it?
Sure. The link is shown up here. It's a YouTube video, but it's also, this is from a state in the U.S., Ohio Department of Transportation, and it really is 1 minute and 53 seconds aimed at the audience of the public, not within the department, not engineers.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah, there we are. That's an incredibly easy thing to copy down in 5 seconds. Maybe we could leave that for a little bit so that at least you can copy it down, or come and see Dave and you can give us the information.
I'd be happy to show it to them on my laptop.
Perfect. What an invitation. There we are. Thank you very much to our 5 experts. A big round of applause. I can ask you. I'll keep Siobhan and Juanjo here. So we move on to the final part of our morning, and we are delighted to have with us Mathieu Fleuneau, who's a lecturer in contemporary history and a historian of the road sector. What an eminent person to finish off our morning. He lectures at Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and is also l'ABEX, EHNE, and the URF think tank in France. Qui de mieux, vous allez nous parler en français, j'imagine. Voilà, qui de mieux pour nous... parce que
Now, you carried out a study stating that we shouldn't actually over-criticize roads. Roads are not an evil. And you're going to share your conclusions with us now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex Taylor, and the organizers of this session. Thank you for giving me the floor. I will try to come back to what was said, but maybe a little bit offbeat. I took part in the 2015 edition of the PPRS, and I talked about a new form of civilization with a certain number of breakthroughs, but it's all about continuity and breakthroughs. to my eyes, we need to convey a different message, not only the corporate message. And it's very important to promote the role of roads. And here we have a new situation, a new geometry, because we know that till now we had a linear message, but now we have a new geometry, a new way of talking about roads. It's been 3 years now since the 2015 edition of the PPRS, and it's all about values. It's not only about economic data. We have to take into account new forms of civilizations conveyed by our road network. Very rapidly, I will try to do what I do with my students, a conference called On the Road. It's very important to introduce in this new geometry that tended to exclude roads, because we had a certain number of agreements, the Grenelle 1 agreement, and we know that the assizes on mobility also played a role. But it's really important to put roads back at the center of our concerns, because roads are important. And as a specialist of this public space, organized not solely on cars, I know that we need to fine-tune our approach. It's important to adapt and modify the relationship between roads and the rest of the world. So this is really my job. We have to keep our ears to the ground, as we can see on this picture. And it's not out of sync with the political agenda, especially in France. This is something that was mentioned yesterday. It's really about our Republican reality. And here in Nice, we know that Nice is the endpoint of the N7 national road. We know that these roads act as a link between different territories, and we know that our territories can teach us a lot about our civilization. Nice is an important city because the first studies at the beginning of the century by Professor Manetti were actually conducted here in Nice to improve the state of our network. I don't know if you can see this picture, but it really testifies the importance of our road network in our modern world. There are a lot of books that talk about this subject, but it's all about mobility. It's not only a functional approach. It's not only a technical debate, because it's difficult to convey messages if you remain too technical. It's really about new forms of mobility. We worked with the French Road Union, and to come back to the development of cars after the Second World War. Let me give you one example, a real opportunity in order for the road community to make its voice heard. You know that we have the automobile fair in Paris with 1 million visitors every year. And of course, a lot of information is being relayed on social media. So it's a highly visible event. And back in 2015, I was actually part of a certain number of workshops with this union. And then in 2016, I was appointed a commissioner for the exhibition on the link between cars and cinema. And we had to change the carpet 3 times because there were so many visitors, including, well, Mr. Macron, who wasn't president yet at the time, and he actually spent an entire hour in this affair. So it was a very glamorous event. But we would like to approach similar topics in the next edition. I don't know if you saw the poster of the next fair. Of course, we are not ready to abandon the steering wheel. I think this is a very good sign of the people's mindsets who want to hold on to their steering wheel. And you can see this exhibition on roads. It's just a few pictures. There's nothing really contractual here because we're still working on it. We're trying to select a certain number of vintage vehicles, but we will show old road signs. We're also working with the Museum of Public Works in Vatan. And unfortunately, in the Paris region, we don't have such a museum, and we don't even have a car museum in the Paris region. So this raises a lot of questions. So we have an opportunity here, and we're still looking for resources because we want to organize this exhibition in one of the central halls of the automobile fair, so in October of this year in Paris. And this is a great opportunity for the road community, focusing on mythical roads, because we know that if you talk about roads and mobility, it's very important to focus on this theme, because it's all about values. You use the word values, and it's very important to promote these values before we actually engage in a technical debate, because your topic is not technical. It's really about values. It's about our heritage, and it's about our assets, especially in the field of road networks. We know that this is the #1 French heritage. And you gave us a lot of examples in Spain, in the US, in the UK, and all of this is fully compatible. So feel free if you want to join us and share your examples with us in the framework of this fair. If you want to join us,
Seems to me that whole morning as a journalist, I'm a journalist, the one thing, for example, I'm a European journalist, the one thing that I've understood after 30 years of talking about Europe is you have to interest people with passion. There has to be emotion. We saw it in the Brexit debate, for example. It's a question of passion. You can present people with as many facts as you want, but basically it's a passionate thing. Whether they're for or against, it's passion. So how do you get the passion back into this, and how do you make roads, like we were talking about Route 66 yesterday, how do you give the emotion back? And then Siobhan and Juanjo, some conclusions.
À volontiers d'un mot.
Passion is a passion for an object, a rich object, and we can't actually limit this to a digital reality. So just driving and feeling the wind in your hair, seeing a landscape is an added value. It's about augmented reality. It's not a digital or virtual reality. It's something about the feelings. And we have to come back to this tandem. It's an object that will generate feelings, sensations. And the object itself, the car, the road, can also give rise to a certain number of sensations. People tend to be a little bit autistic in their relationship with their cars, and this is not my type of relationship with cars.
Conscious of the time, and I'm just wondering, road emotion was something I talked about many years ago. I think it was too early at the time. Maybe the timing's more appropriate now. But I just wanted to just briefly just give a little summary of, you asked me at the beginning what my expectations were of the workshop, and I said I was convinced we would hear 5-6 presentations of demonstrating, some excellent initiatives and, covering surveys, covering, influencing politicians. We've looked at education and safety and, the toolbox or the play box. I thought you said Playboy at one point. I was thinking that's it. But,
that would be a way of interesting people.
It's a very diverse set of presentations, but they all have a lot in common. They're all looking, at the same goal. And that was another of my reflections early this morning, saying, how do we get all those singers, all those voices together in an appropriate way, in an umbrella that would actually, make this choir, you know, and I'm actually going to ask Juan Jose to give maybe his interpretation or his concept of how we can build that choir.
I wish to present you, well, this approach is one idea around to create International Road Maintenance Day. We have many international days, many things, but why not to create that to defend, to speak to all the people around the world, one day each year, speak, and well, of course, about the importance of the maintenance of the road. Only 3 weeks ago, we started to create this account, Twitter. Do you have it? I invite you to follow this account. It's RMD. In only two weeks, we have more than 223 followers. And I hope from now, improve much more this quantity. This is our logo, and this is our hashtag, specific hashtag for this day. But which is the day? Well, the idea is first time, it's unique, it's pioneer, and the idea is to create each year, first Thursday, April. That means in this year is 5th April. All the people in all the countries to create an IRMD event. That means what exactly? Well, it's not a question. In Spain, for example, I will show you 2 round tables speaking about things like today. But the idea is all the people in different countries create events to defend the importance of the maintenance of the roads. Of course, all the people together around a common hashtag like this. The hashtag will be IRMD 2018. And we have now, this is the image of the International Road Maintenance Day. The slogan of this year is, I hope you will be happy with that, maintaining the roads is protecting the environment. I think it's a known approach, but not so used like others. It's not a question to link accidents or asset value or other things. Well, why not to be focused in this approach? I feel it's an interesting approach. All the people understand, and the message are very easy. This is the website. I invite you to know 2 languages for the moment, Spanish and English. International Road Maintenance Day, and the site is roadmaintenanceday.org. We are created trying to be a sample message, understandable for all the people, common people. 5 cards. First card, every single kilogram of CO2 invested in paving roads, maintenance can avoid the emission of 36 kilos of CO2 caused by the vehicles driving on this road. Second, a short message, easy to understand for all the people. We can reduce 13% when the road is in bad conditions. Upgrade 1/3 is a conclusion, a very known document last year presented. 1/3 of the entire road network in Europe. That is another way to show this argument. To replace 3 million cars, 0 emission. Or each square meter well maintained, prevent or avoid 2,350 kilos in 30 years. It's incredible. 1 kilo in relation to for the future. And to finish, impact. Deteriorated pavement is an obstacle for social development, negative impact of the economy, harm, and the environment. Well, how can I help? Well, our proposal is, at least for the moment, 4 possibilities. IRMD friends. That means send 5 tweets using this hashtag, and you will be in this list. For the moment, quite 20 people. Partner, if you are not people, if you are a company, organization, association, do something to spread this day. Propose your idea. We try to collect the efforts of all the people around the world. The sponsors are the organizations or companies like ASEFMA, for example, organizing an event in Spain. We have, for the moment, confirmed 2 events, one in Spain, one in Slovenia. But I wait from Mexico, I hope France, I hope for United States, I hope for many, many countries. The idea is, why not all the day during 24 hours, showing different events, showing these events on the website, and collecting all the messages with this common hashtag. This is the program in Madrid from 9 to 11:30, 2 hours and a half. Will be streamed. You have free access, of course, and will be during all the day on the emission. This is the program, and that means in Slovenian, same thing, International Maintenance Road Day. And first time I show you is the video trying to collect all these images. As you see, it's possible, accessible to the website. Collecting all these images, we have a video showing the importance of the maintenance of the roads, the impact negative, reducing the emissions in a good conditions. We can transform and we can, to avoid the emission of the CO2 and equivalent in terms of the vehicles, the cars, that means a very important quantity, or in terms of the total quantity of CO2 accumulated. And we remember the most important message: invest in the maintenance of the roads. That means prevent the environment. To finish, only to remember the 4 possibilities to the moment, but we are open to other possibilities, and that's all. I hope you will be IRMD friends, or why not, to create an IRMD event in your country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Juan José, Siobhan, and thank you very much indeed, Mathieu Frenot, for your passion too, which you conveyed to us. Just 1 or 2 announcements now, what the rest of the day. At 1 o'clock, I never know how to say a cocktail déjeunatoire. It means you lunch and the same time cocktail, with the exhibition, and the Agora session will be starting. Afterwards at 2:30, 14:30, we have the start of the parallel sessions. And then this evening, ladies and gentlemen, at 7:30, we have this fantastic evening in the Negresco, one of the iconic hotels here in Nice. You're free to go along if you're enrolled. It's a really wonderful place. You'll see, but you have to be, you have to have put your name forward for that, and we'll meet you there. Otherwise, it'll be a pleasure to see you again tomorrow for our final plenary. A big round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Bon appétit.